Hello and welcome to another edition of the Inked Up Runner. This is Jason, and on today's episode, I have Sho Gray. Sho is the 100-mile record holder here in the state of Tennessee. He also is a silver medalist at a 24-hour event where he raced against Harvey Lewis. Sho also has ran countless 100-milers from Leadville to Cruel Jewel. He also has competed in multiple 24-hour events such as Desert Solstice. We talk about Sho's journey into running, how he got into it, the difference between running in Japan and in the United States, and his upcoming plans to run the Tahoe 200 next year. So everybody sit back and enjoy. All right, guys, I have got with me Sho Gray. Sho, like I mentioned in the intro, he is the fastest 100-mile runner here in the state of Tennessee, and his countless other achievements. And he's training for this big 200-mile race. I don't know if I interviewed a guy last week, or the last interview, not last week. His name was Wes Plate. He ran 4 200-milers in a year. He did Cocodona, and then he ran the whole Triple Crown of 200-milers, which is crazy. Could you imagine?
No, that is crazy. Maybe someday.
Maybe someday, right? When you got plenty of time on your hands. Well, I
Exactly.
appreciate you joining me. So let's just jump right in. I mean, you're no stranger to running. You've been running for a bit now. So how did you like? How did all this start for you? How did you get into the whole running gig?
So, I mean, it's a long story, but I'll try to shorten as much as I can. But it all started when I was in sixth grade. So, in sixth grade, I was a soccer player. I love soccer. Soccer was amazing, but my team kind of sucked. And no matter how much I tried, it didn't matter because the whole team needed to try. And so that was my sixth grade year. In seventh grade, my sister, who's a year younger than me, she's like in sixth grade, she wanted to try cross country. And I'm like, huh, in cross country, it doesn't matter what everyone else does. If I practice and try hard, then I'm going to get better. So in seventh grade, I joined cross country and got faster. I was definitely not fast, but I enjoyed the fact that, the more work that I put into myself, the better I became. And so by the time I was a senior, I was decently fast. I mean, I wasn't anywhere near, some of the other seniors in high school. But I forgot. This is all in Japan, FYI.
Okay.
um, so like growing up in Japan, like we had a little bit of a different time. Instead of like states and nationals and stuff like that, we had a Kanto international schools where we ran against each other, and then afterwards we would go to a different place. This time, my senior year, it was in Guam, and so in Guam we had a 5K against all the international schools in the Far East, and so that was on Friday, and on Saturday we had a relay race, and on Sunday my coach was like, "Hey, there's a half marathon," and I'm like, "What's a half marathon?" He's like, "It's 13.1 miles." And I'm like, "I want to try that." So I raced the 5K, got like, just a tad over 18 minutes. So again, not that fast. The next day I did a relay, which I did 4 miles. And then the day after I did a half marathon. Now, in that half marathon, I mean, this was my first half marathon, so I just like didn't know what to do, but I just kept running, and I finished, I think, an hour and 38 minutes, and I was like, this is a lot more fun than these 5Ks, and so I decided then that if there's a half marathon, there's got to be a full marathon. So when I, went to college, I would definitely run a marathon. So from there, I went, and in college, my freshman year, I signed up for my first marathon. not knowing that the Knoxville Marathon had a bunch of these hills, and so I was like, it's just a marathon, and I ran that, and I think it was like a 3 hours and 12 minutes for my first full marathon, and I'm like, I like this. Junior year, I did my sub 3 hour marathon, and then I'm like, yeah, this is cool, this is fun. And after graduating college, I started, being a real adult, and a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you like running?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "There's this 50 miler in Atlanta that you gotta run." I'm like, 50 miles? And so I read up on it. I'm like, I got like 2 months to train for this. So I jumped in, did my first 50 miler, or rather, I did my first 30 miler and death marched the last 20. And I was like, I want to do better. And from there, little by little, I started learning more about ultra marathons and training better and doing a much better nutrition plan for sure. And now I guess, 100 miles are my thing. And the next step from 100 is 200. So that's where I am right now.
Absolutely. So you didn't even do a 50K. You just went straight from the marathon right into the 50 miler.
Yeah.
And so I guess you mentioned Knoxville, so you're in East Tennessee. So
Hmm.
so after having those hills and stuff, I'm not actually familiar because I know most of these North Face events aren't around anymore, which is a
Hmm.
shame. Um,
Yeah.
where was this like was it like a trail? Was it a trail road?
Yeah,
What was
it
it
was the
like?
North Face 50 miler in Atlanta that I did. And I think that was 2011, I think, was when I did my first ultra.
And it was a trail.
Yeah, trail. So I just jumped into it with no trail experience whatsoever.
Well, the good news is there's plenty of trails up there in your neck of the woods to run around in.
Absolutely.
So you got into the 50 miler, and you like that one obviously quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, and then I guess, when did you decide that you wanted to at that point, how what did you do to dial in your training to get faster? Because just looking at some of your times and stuff, like you definitely got faster, fairly it seemed fairly quick. So like, what did you do to dial in the difference between that one race to getting up to getting your level up?
So first, I was just curious. So after the 50 miler, the next thing I did was learn how to race better. And so I signed up for a 12-hour race. And in the 12-hour race, it was called a Black Mountain Monster. It was a 5K loop. So I had a station which like I could make sure that I could get my nutrition dialed in. So I learned a lot more about nutrition, and then I went back and did the 50 miler the next year, the same 50 miler from Atlanta, and I was an hour faster. I'm like, this is cool. But I had also done 62 miles in that 12 hours. So I'm like, if I could do 62 in 12, I could probably do 100 in 24. So I signed up again for Black Mountain Monster and did 100, except they only counted full laps, so I had to do 102.3 miles. And so I was like, okay, I did that in about 22 hours plus change. Can I get any faster? How can I do that? And so, in all honesty, consistency is what's going to get anybody up to that level. And in training consistently day after day after day after day and getting used to the miles on my legs, it got a lot easier. Of course, there's going to be a different point where, like, when I started getting faster and faster, I hit a plateau, and so there's only so much that just running will do, and so I needed to start implementing more speed and a lot more strength, and so that's where I started adding a lot more track workouts. And I don't know if track workouts are as popular in the ultra running world, but that's what I knew. And since I enjoy studying running a lot, I decided to implement like what I knew about running into my own life and added a lot of track workouts, which helped me get faster and use that speed and slow down for my, long and easy runs. But having that speed in the, in the bank allowed me to have that reserve so that I could keep on going. And when I first started doing these faster 100 milers, I just kept doing a run walk thing. And actually, even the current Tennessee record that I hold, it's like 15 and a half hours. So it's not really that fast, but I was able to do that by running a mile, then walking for 20 seconds, running a mile, walking for 20 seconds, and doing that over and over until the last 30 miles, which I just ran it because I was just too tired and needed to just finish it. And so it's understanding how to pace yourself as well in the race. So I got the speed down, which is one part, but the second part was getting the pace down. And then the third part would be the nutrition, of course, because if you don't have energy, it doesn't matter how great your plan is or your fitness is, you're not going to finish.
And to me, I think that's the hardest part, is getting the nutrition figured out, because you can do too much and you can do too little, and
Mm-hmm.
depending on which direction you can go depends on how your body reacts. Either you can kind of run out of energy, or it can just outright make you sick. So I guess since you mentioned it, we'll jump into that 100-mile Tennessee record. Talk about that a little bit. First off, what made you want to go for it? Where did you talk about where you did it at, and kind of what that whole experience was like for you?
So I think there are only one or two places that you can officially get a Tennessee record in because it's got to be USATF certified. And I ran the course before. It's called the Pistol Ultra,
Hmm.
and I'm going to be running it next year. And I'm actually going to break my record and do a lot better. So I mean that's the goal anyway. But so I've done it before. I've paced and crewed on it before. I've ran the 100 miles before, and I thought that I had the fitness to be able to beat the record. Now, the record prior to mine was, I believe, 15 hours and 30 some minutes. And so I was like, if I could go a fifth for 15:30, I would be happy. And so I just planned according to that. And all my runs were about closer to like a 8 minute pace because I think it was if you do a 9:15 or so, it would be about a 15 hours and 30 minutes for the 100 miler. So I would train at an 8 minute pace for my easy runs to keep that easy so that as I slowed down throughout the race, I would eventually balance out so that it would average out to a 9:15 pace, and then I would see how much I can hold towards the end because I would plan on a positive split because I know that no matter what I do, there's something that's going to mess up, and I got a plan for that. So for the race, I did what I knew best at that time, which was run for a mile, then walk for 20 seconds, then finish that next mile, then walk for 20 seconds. During the 20 seconds, I would drink a little bit or eat a little bit, nothing too much, because if I would eat a lot throughout the race, like, have like 15, every 15 minutes, eat a bunch or drink a lot, then my stomach would act up. So I kind of figured out that if I had just sips here and there and bites here and there throughout the race, it would provide me with enough energy without straining my digestive system. And when I would do that consistently, it would keep me going. And I would also make sure that when I'm walking, I'm taking it easy so that my heart rate's going down. And then I would just go back up and run again. And it would never really go too high because I would always stop after every mile. So kind of like a forced pacing. Obviously, now I'm at a different place where I'm learning to run consistently throughout the race. But at that time, that was what I knew was best. Now, I knew my fitness was good, and I believed that my nutrition plan was good. But the hardest part is the hardest part for literally everyone, which is at the 70-mile mark. I had 30 miles left, and I was tired. It, it was miserable. I had 30 miles, and in order to get this, the course record, the Tennessee record, I would have needed to average a 10-minute mile, which sounds easy until you put the 70 miles beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I need to do this. And I was like, oh, maybe if I do a 9-minute mile for the first 10 miles, then I could do a 10-minute mile the next 10, and then an 11-minute mile the last 10, and I'd be great. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So I pushed as hard as I could. I ran that, 10-mile part. And when I reached the 80-mile mark, I had run a 9:58 or something like that. And I'm like, oh no, I can't do this. And so I was mentally done. But fortunately, I have a great crew, and the assistant race director, Mary Kate's shout out, she was super helpful, and she gave me like so much positivity that I was like, okay, I just have to do this one more time and get that 10-minute mile in one more time. And at this point, the 50 milers were also running the night run. So I was like, I'll just run with them, which I mean, I don't know if it was the greatest idea, but I still did that and I ran with them. And, I finished the next 10 miles at about a 10-minute pace. And I'm like, if I could do this one more time, I'll get it. And so I pushed myself, did my best, and it was a wonderful feeling. Only the last, I guess, 30 yards because I was dying throughout the last 10 miles. Managed to get there, and I knew I had it, and I was happy I finished. It was a great feeling, but there you go.
And so, what is your? Do you have a specific goal you're looking at to get next time around?
I would like to get a sub 14.
So 14.
Yeah.
That's and I've never have ran the pistol before or run
Hmm.
the pistol before.
Hmm.
But it's like on like a greenway type system,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's kind of like an out, and then you go back and you go out and you go back. It's just
Yeah. It's a
like
10-mile out with a lollipop and a little branch out and back, and then back, and that's like a 10 miles, and it's relatively flat.
and the good thing about a race like that is it's easy to get eight at. You're not looking at big gaps where you don't have aid if you need it. I know a lot. There are some ultras that have big gaps in between aid stations, and that can make it
Hmm.
tough, especially when you're trying to hit a time or you're trying to hit a goal or whatever. But you know, when when you talk about like you have a really good pedigree of road and trail stuff. Do you prefer the road stuff over the trail stuff, or do you like them kind of both the same? What do you prefer?
I think there's value to both. On roads and tracks, you can go for speed and practice becoming faster, whereas on trails, you get to see more and there's like a lot of beauty that you're around. And it also requires a different kind of running, and it helps you become a better athlete from a more rounded perspective because you have to adjust your cadence and such. So I think there's value to both. I like going for speed, but I also like looking and being in a beautiful place. So it's a win either way.
It's a win either way. Yeah, I'm more of a I prefer the trail stuff mainly because I'm slow as molasses on the road, and so when I'm on the trail I actually feel kind of fast. But I was looking at some of your races, and one thing that jumped out to me is you've been to Desert Solstice a few times. What was that experience like?
Oh man, that's a totally different experience. That was very stressful actually. um, Desert Solstice is basically like in one of the races, it's like almost an invite only, and so like that was the most stress I've ever had in a race. Um, I wasn't sure what was going on. I only knew people, and it's actually kind of a scary race. It's definitely a lot different because, like, for example, if I would compare Desert Solstice and the Stinger, they're two different races in which Desert Solstice, the whole thing is a competition, and you want to be the best. And this is like, I'm not like cutthroat or anything, but this is like iron sharpening iron, and there's going to be blood kind of thing. And it's a
Mhm.
very, very high level in that sense. Whereas Stinger, on the other hand, it's a community oriented, supportive place. And so it's a little bit more difficult to get a higher mileage, because there's a whole slew of different types of runners, from elites to beginners on the course. And so it's a completely different scenario. Over here, though, you have a lot of support, whereas in Desert Solstice, you only have the support of whoever's with you, and it's a very, very competitive thing. Again, it's a different type of race for sure, and I mean, I learned a lot from it. I also failed quite a bit on that. So,
So so how did you how did you get into it? Like what you said it was kind of tough to get into it. Was there a way that you qualified to get into it?
I ran the Merrill's Mile. That was a long time ago. Excuse me, I'm coughing right now. I ran 123.77 miles in Merrill's Mile, which was my PR, and it's been like since 2014. And from there, I asked if I was good enough to go in, and they were like, "Sure," or something like that, and like they got me in. So that's where I was, like, because apparently that was where the elites go, and I was like, okay, I'm like on the bottom of the list, but I get to run against people, and so the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to learn a lot, which I did.
Yeah,
And
because
so that's how I got in, and that's how I learned a lot. That's how I ran with some of the best runners out there.
I was looking at the 2018 year that you ran it in. Um, I mean, it's like a who's who of running. Camille was there. I think that was the year that Camille did like 160 something miles. You had Greg Armstrong, Nick Curry, Bob Hearn, and Bob Hearn is a freaking stud. He was the one who wore the thong at Javelina. And
Yeah.
I got to interview him. He also is the one that owns the record for Vol State. So like Bob
Hmm.
is like he's a monster, but
He is a monster. He's a data guy, and I'm like, I really appreciate that, because I study data like none other, and I look up to him because he is such a data nerd, and I'm like, I want to do that.
I do have to ask you though. I do have to ask you. You beat Courtney to Walter, so you actually can talk a little trash. You can be like,
No, no.
if you can be like, look, I beat Courtney D at Desert Solstice. Nobody has to know how or why.
Everybody has good races, everybody has bad races, but we all know at the end of the day who's up there and who's trying to make it up there. So no, I'm not going to do that. That's not respectful.
I
We
was
all
looking.
know where she's at, and I'm still catching up to her.
No,
I
I
will
was talking.
catch her though.
I was talking about at that race though. You beat her. You know, she was.
Yeah, no, no, doesn't count.
It was pretty cool though. Still, but but anyway, and I think one of the other cool things that we were talking about, I guess, before the interview is you did a 24-hour event that you got a silver medal at. Talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
So in 2019, the USA Track and Field, the national championships for the 24-hour race was held in Cleveland, Ohio. I had trained pretty decently for that race. I was ready for it. I was going to do high mileage. It was all going to be amazing, except it wasn't. And it wasn't just me, but for the whole field as well. I started out, I think, about third through fifth or something like that. There was a good number of people that were up there. Harvey Lewis was the obvious leader of that race,
Yeah.
and he was doing fairly well. But what we hadn't gotten ready for was the heat. It was September, and it should have been quite cool, but for some reason that day it was very hot, and I knew that I was weak against the heat, so I was like, this is not going to be my race. I'm going to stop right now and walk, take charge of my hydration, take charge of keeping myself cool. It doesn't matter however many people pass me. I'm going to let them do their thing. I'm going to take care of me and do the best that I can. And so immediately from about midday all the way up until about 5 p.m. I was walking, and it was not fun because I had all this fitness, but I wasn't able to do anything with it because I knew how much the heat had impacted me, and I was trying to conserve all that for the night. By the time I think 9 o'clock rolled around at night, I was, I think, somewhere around 15th place. And everybody had, made it up quite a bit. And I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to start catching people. And I started picking people off little by little because in my brain, I was like, I'm smarter than they are. I mean, of course, everybody's different, everybody's in a different place, but I needed to tell myself something positive. And so I was like, okay, I did this. It was a smart thing. I have more energy than everybody else. I can catch them. And so telling myself this positive, thoughts and saying, I can do this, little by little, I started catching people. And before 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, I had managed to get myself into top three, and little by little caught up to second place. I was asking my crew member, saying, hey, where's number two? Am I going to catch him? And he's like, at one point, he's like, no, you're never going to catch number two. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because you're number two. And I'm like, wow. And so that was a very, very happy time. And I was like, can I catch Harvey? Uh, Short answer, no, I can't. But during that time, I was like, maybe I could. And so I started clicking off 730 miles to see if I could hold that, because that's how much it would have taken to catch him. But what ended up was most everybody that was ahead of me during the day had dropped out by the time night came because of the heat, because the heat had impacted so many people. And I had run, I mean, one of the smartest races I've ever run, because I kept my cool and just slowed down and walked for hours. And even though it wasn't the furthest that I've run in 24 hours, it was the smartest race that I've ran. And I think I got 114 or 118 miles that day, which isn't that much, but it was enough for a silver medal for the USA Championships in 2019. So
That's exciting though. I mean, how many people can say they're chasing Harvey Lewis? I mean, you were the only person, you were his number one competitor that race. So that's pretty cool. So listening to you, you seem to like these 24-hour style events. What are your thoughts jumping into like a backyard style event? And I know we're talking about significantly heavy miles, but I mean, would that be
mhm.
something that would ever kind of interest you? Because I know you mentioned 200 milers, so I just thought
Yeah.
I had to mention the backyard.
Well, first, I want to get to a point where I can run far, but backyard is a whole different beast. I've always had a part of me has always been interested in that. And I have this naive thinking, and I will admit it is very naive and very stupid of me to think that I can do 200 miles in this way, which it could be possible. I don't know, but it seems easy because it's about pacing and it's forcing you to pace. And so I'm like, I can do that. But here's the one thing that I'm worried about in backyard racing. After that, to the second day or on that second day during the night, am I going to make it? Because I like to sleep. The whole reason I decided to do 100 milers and do fast 100 milers was because if I finish fast enough, I can go home and sleep. I was like, that makes life easy.
Well, that makes sense.
So the backyard, I have this like cockiness of like, oh, I can totally do that, but that is naive of me to think of that, because I know that my weakness is going to be the moment night comes on the second day. Am I going to make it? I have no idea.
Yeah, that's true. That's a whole different thing because even with a 200-mile race, you can sleep. Um,
Yeah.
it was interesting because, like I was telling you before, right when we started, I interviewed Wes Plate, who who ran Cocodona and did the Triple Crown. And it was
Mhm.
funny listening to him. He barely slept at all. And I think he ended up coming in seventh overall. What they do is they take the three races and they do a
Mhm.
cumulative ranking. And I think
Yeah.
he came in seventh overall among the three races, which is just crazy because, in listening to him, he was talking about his mileage, and like his mileage a week was like 50 miles a week, and every now and then he
Mhm.
would jump up to like 70, and even he wasn't even doing 50 miles a week. So it sounds like listening to somebody like him, and he's a 200
Mhm.
mile specialist, is it's mainly just like the way you handled yourself at that event with Harvey, where you manage your effort. Because it seems like these 200-mile races are all about managing your effort. You don't go out
Mhm.
too quick, you don't go out too slow, you go out just right, and then you just manage that effort throughout, and then you can finish it. So I mean, I think based off of listening to him, that seemed to be the answer. Uh,
Mhm.
because not everybody's Jeff Browning, who is funny. I interviewed him right after he got his FKT at the rim, the rim, the rim, and he was
Mhm.
talking about doing the 200 miler, his first 200 miler. And it's funny because he was like, yeah, I have a client that ran it last year, and he was like, I just want to beat his time. That's all I care about. And then of course, Jeff goes out and he wins the whole damn thing,
Mhm.
which is like not many people can do that. But it's just like it's interesting because more people are jumping into that distance and seeing
Mhm.
dabbling in it a little bit. What's it like? Which I
Mhm.
don't think I would ever want to do anything like that. But you have a
You
long
say that
time.
now, but
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a long time. I mean, and you have a long time before you have to run the race. I mean, you got June of next year before you have to
yeah.
you get into Tahoe. So I got a few questions. I don't want to jump around too much, but I'm going to jump around a little bit. So you said you were in Japan. How long were you in Japan for? And how would you compare the running, the competitiveness in Japan versus the
Mm.
States?
Okay, so I was born and raised in Japan, 17 years there, and I came to college in America. So Japan's running community is different. I mean, I can't say anything positive, negative, different. It's just different. It's just completely a different thing. Um, in America, we have the football. In Japan, and actually in America, let's just say we have the Super Bowl. In Japan, we have what's called the Hakone Ekiden, which is a relay race that they do at the beginning of the year. So January 1st, they have the top uh, athletes of at the university level, and there's 10 of them. 5 of them go out on the first day, and then 5 of them come back on the second day. And it's a super long relay race that everybody in Japan watches. And so I believe the viewing is more than percentage wise, more than what Americans would watch for the Super Bowl Sunday. So that's how crazy running can be, especially New Year's Haponeki. Another thing that I have to say is like totally different is in America, um, there's different seasons like cross country, track, indoor track, and outdoor track, and there's that in Japan too. But in America, there seems to be only a few people that are crazy and do all three of them, like cross country, indoor, and outdoor track. Whereas most Americans, most schools don't have indoor track, and so you would do cross country, something in the middle, and then outdoor track. In Japan, they only have that one sport of running, and so that's all they do. So I mean, they have cross country and all that stuff, but it's a never ending season. And because of that, they just continue to push people, push people, push people, and get faster and faster and faster. And because I like studying, I was looking at the number of Japanese athletes that are like super fast in the marathon, and there's quite a few actually
Mhm.
that I found that more than America, which is weirdly enough. I mean, there's quite a few there's individuals in America that are faster than Japan, but as a group, there are so many athletes that can run. I was it a sub 210 or something like that in Japan compared to how many people in America can run a sub 210. And it's crazy to think that it all starts because running has been embedded since you were in elementary school, going all the way up until like post collegiate. And so it's a non-stop, continuous running. It's all speed oriented, and you start with the shorter runs, get further and further, and all of a sudden you have a super fast marathon runner. I mean, it's definitely different. Like I said, I can't say if it's a good or bad thing because in some sense that's a lot of pressure and it does cause people to burn out. But it also does. I mean, looking at the numbers, it does say that people have there are results. There are good results from it. So.
Absolutely, and and I guess it's the culture there, like
Mm-hmm.
like American football is the culture here, and baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But you remember, and I'm sure you do. You remember what was it, 2018, the Boston Marathon? Remember
Oh
it
yeah.
had that terrible weather, and then
Mm-hmm.
you had the Japanese ultra runner slash road guy. I think his name was like Yuki.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to butcher his name, but Kawauchi or something like that.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
remember he ended up winning the Boston Marathon, and,
Yeah.
and they said they attributed that to the fact that he was such a, like you had mentioned earlier, such a strong, well-rounded runner that he
Mm-hmm.
was used to running in garbage conditions because he was an ultra runner. He had a very strong road background as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of these marathon folks, road marathon folks, were struggling to pull themselves together in that garbage, crap, rainy, cold weather, he
Yeah.
was just like, let's go. This is
Mm-hmm.
my element, y'all. I'm about to bring it home. And he won. And I think that really speaks to kind of what you're talking about how that the culture there in Japan builds a much more total package style runner.
Yeah, a strong athlete. A word that I like to use in Japanese is called gaman, which translated means perseverance, but it's a again it's a double-edged sword because again if you do gaman, if you persevere too much, you might break. But in being able to gaman and being able to persevere, you're able to forge yourself and become stronger because you're putting all that energy into who you are, your character. And as your character develops, it becomes stronger and stronger. And I think that part of the culture really helps with long distance running.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. So, you know, I could sit here and go through all your races and talk to you about them, but I'm just going to dial in on a couple that just jumped out at me real fast. You ran Cruel Jewel.
Oh man, yeah, I just jumped into it. I was not ready, and I was like, you know what? What better way to get ready for a race than jumping into a race?
So it just, I guess the main question is anybody ever truly ready for Cruel Jewel?
I'm sure the answer is yes, but man, it is miserable.
Yeah, that's
Don't do what
true.
I did, which was just jump in with hardly any training because I'm like, might as well try because I mean, let's see what happens. But even with proper training, not only do you get the elevation, so much ups and downs, but the amount of humidity that you have there is crazy. And so you lose so much and you start going crazy because you're like, I'm losing water and I can't speak clearly. And so it's a very hard race to prepare for. And now I'm just like, maybe I should sign up for that again. But
And then of course I see you sporting your Leadville jacket there. What was that experience like for you there?
outside of not being able to breathe, it was fun. It was, I mean, I'd say the first 40 miles and the last 40 miles were the most fun. The middle 20 miles, not so fun. For some, like, not for some reason. Anytime I went over 10,000, like 11,000 feet, like, so basically the first time going up Hope and then coming down and going back up Hope's Pass and then coming back down, I could not breathe. I was just kind of like painstakingly, slowly making my way through. I mean, I had my poles weren't doing anything because my hands were jello just because I couldn't breathe. It was, I mean, it was a lot more different than I've ever any other race. It's a flatter race than you think because you think that in Colorado the mountains are like crazy there, but Leadville's actually a lot more flat. And at Hope's Pass, when you go up to that point, if you're not acclimated to the air or lack thereof, then that's where it's going to kill you. But fortunately, I had banked enough time. And so I was able to climb up and go down the other side and climb back up and go down the other side. And, you know, I believe that most people would get kicked off the course after you come back Hope's Pass because that's where the like they missed the time or something like that. I was able to make that by long shot because I had the good first 40 miles. But man, not being able to breathe, it does make a difference. So
It's funny. I had a friend who ran that race, and he was funny because he talked about that Hope Pass climb, and and he's from here. His name's
uh-huh.
Jason Lloyd, and
Hmm.
and he it was funny because he didn't have problems breathing. It was funny. He said he got up to that point, and that was the only area where there was really not a lot of crew. There was no crew there, and he
Hmm.
was like, that's the only area that he got to take it easy because he was like, thank God I didn't have a crew there telling me to get my ass moving. He goes, so I got to actually relax there for a minute. And he goes, and then I had to get moving again. But
Hmm.
he said great things about that race, and that it was just it really is a really a great event. But I think just kind of closing things up a little bit.
Hmm.
You got the Tahoe 200.
Yeah.
What is what are your what's your goal for that? Like what are you
Oh.
for? Because I know you
I'm
got a
like, do I
goal.
want to share? I don't know. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, I don't. For that race, I kind of want to keep it a secret because I really want to do very well. And I had a dream about that race, and in my dream, there is a specific number
Okay.
that I saw at the finish line of my dream. And let's just say that it's faster than the other times that are on the list.
I got you.
So I'll leave it at that and say we'll see if I'm again being too naive or if my dream's going to come true.
Well, what we'll have to do is we'll after Tahoe, we'll see how you feel about it, and then you can come on and tell us all about how it went for you, because
Sounds like a plan.
that's a super good event. I guess my last question for you. I got two
Yeah.
questions. My last question is: you're in East Tennessee. Do you spend a lot of time running in the mountains up there?
Li- Yes, I've started to. At first, again, I was more road speed oriented, but ever since discovering more and more fun of trails, I've decided that like I'm going to do a balanced running where I'd say a third of my runs are going to be on the track, a third of my runs are going to be on the road, and a third of my runs are going to be on the trails. Now, there's quite a few trails that I live by. Like, I specifically bought this house because I can run on those three places. They're within, I mean, everything's within a running thing for ultra runners, but for me especially, not even a mile away, there's a trail system and there's a track a stone's throw away from me and a mile from like half a mile from me. And I can run to a greenway super easy. So everything around me I can run. the Smokies are an hour away, but I have started to enjoy, especially the last year, running up and down the mountains there, and I'm starting to get interested in, or I've actually already done some Strava segments on the longer ones, and just going for the crowns because it seems like a lot of fun.
It's funny, you actually took one of my very best friend's Strava segments from him.
Sorry.
It was the Boulevard segment.
Uh huh.
Yeah, it was funny
Okay.
because we were talking about it before we came on. I was like, because I was like prepping for your interview, and I was texting my friend. I'm like, this is what I have. Is there something about him that I'm missing? I want to not miss something.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, it was funny because the guy who you took the record didn't say anything, but the other guy who's in my chat group, my
Uh
little
huh.
group chat, he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, he took Will's segment up there on the Boulevard." And Will finally came on, and he was like, "Tell him to give it back." And then my friend John came on and said, "Go get it."
I mean, yes. I'm sorry I took it, but it was just so tasty. I had to
Oh
take it.
no, I know, man. I'm not taking only segment I'm taking up there is a SKT, the slowest known time. So, but that's awesome, man. So I guess I always ask this. I usually end every interview like this.
Hmm.
What is like what's your end? I mean, do you have like an in like some sort of big goal that you're looking to do with this, with running? I mean, do you have like some sort of larger goal that we haven't talked about that you really are looking to achieve? Because just looking at your numbers, you have like a ton of potential, and I didn't know kind of what you're wanting to do with all that potential.
Whew, that's a hard question because there's so many things that I want to do. But simply put, I want to be the best that I can be. And whether that be on trails, on roads, or track, I want to be strong. And I want to seek what it means to become strong. And so I'm on a journey to see how strong I can become. As a trail runner, I want to see myself, um, I mean, it's hard to say just winning races, but like that's great and all. But I want to see myself going through races and finishing the race, knowing that I was able to finish it with the strength and continue to train and going into road races, going and running the speed that at which I'd be proud of. And for 100 miles, I want to get sub 14. I want to get sub 13 eventually, for roads or track or something like that. For the trails, I am next year. I'll be running on at UTMF, so Ultra Trail to Mount Fuji, and so I will be running that race, and I plan on doing well. And again, well, if you know what that means.
Hmm.
Um, and I want 2023 to become a stepping stone to the next level of my running. I've little by little changed my life in a way where I've begun to, financially speaking, support myself with running and coaching and things like that, and it's given me a lot more freedom to be able to run because that's been the plan all along, to give myself the time so that I can train properly. And now that I have the time, I'm training better than ever and becoming a little bit stronger. Getting myself to being part of Team USA would be a great goal that I would love to be a part of, whether it be in the 24-hour team or mountain running or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. I think over the next couple of years, the answer will present itself because my next step, the main thing is for me to become a stronger athlete. So finishing well at getting my course record down to 14 hours, winning UTMF and I guess Tahoe if that's possible. We'll see. Um, and seeing from there how much stronger I can become. So
Well, that's
I don't know if
awesome.
that answers your question, but
No, it really does. I mean, everybody's got, everybody's got a pathway they're looking at, and it seems like you're on a great trajectory just to keep hammering down. So, but I really appreciate it. It's always great. I love meeting, new people, and I love meeting local people. I mean, I'm not very far away from you. I'm in Murfreesboro, which is, a couple hours
if
away.
you want to go run,
And I used to live in Knoxville, so I know the area very well, and I go up to the mountains and run quite a bit. I'm in the process of trying to plan a LeConte run right now with a friend.
nice.
So, but I appreciate it. As always, guys, these will be there'll be a video version, there'll be an audio version. 'Cause I know a lot of people don't care to watch video version; they'd rather just put it in their ears and go on a run and listen to it. So there'll be both of these, and until the next time, I'll see you on the trail.